Hello and welcome back. This is the Media Stand. I'm Derek, and I finally finished all of the movies from January 2025 from Vinegar Syndrome. So we're going to talk about them. I kind of wanted to start off talking about one that I was maybe the most excited to watch. That is Terrornauts, the new VSL Vinegar Syndrome Labs title. Uh, Forever keeping me confused as to what the Vinegar Syndrome Labs is for. A beautiful inside cover. Kind of wish this is what the outside looked like. This was a movie heavily inspired by the popularity of Doctor Who in the 60s, around the time that the Daleks became a villain, and then the BBC said, hey, everybody loves these Dalek things, so they made a couple movies about the Daleks, starring Peter Cushing as the Doctor. Some people don't consider those canon. And then they said, let's make more stuff like that. And boy, did they ever, because this straight up feels like 60s Who, and I loved it. It's about a bunch of scientists who pick up a radio wave from space. They say, that was weird, it came from that asteroid. And then they send a reply, and then a ship comes and picks them up, literally picks up the building that they were in, flies them to the asteroid, and then they go through a series of escape rooms where they're tested on how well they can figure out the technology, and then realize all they were brought here because the structure that was on the asteroid is actually like a defense turret, and there's bad alien people on their way to destroy Earth, and they're there to stop them. It's really not that convoluted, but it's just random. And it's got very beautiful, very adorable miniature ships, some just great cheesy miniature work, and it's funny. And there's a lot of weird sexual jokes. Now to talk about Iced, one that I think people have been waiting a long time for. And even myself, I figured this would be coming from Vinegar Syndrome, and then when they started their degausser line, this is one that I thought was definitely going to do that. You get repeated artwork here, and then on the inside it does not turn into anything else except for, get rid of the disc, a cool little, just like inside art from the director who did Beyond the Door 3. This is a late 80s slasher from 1988, which is just proof that I needed to have that year be my number one forever and ever. It's about a bunch of ski-going peoples who just right out the gate get into a fight about who is the best skier and who can go down a hill through some trees the best. And then somebody gets upset and they decide to go skiing late at night, and then they die. And then the group of friends go to a ski lodge years later, and then they think, oh no, is that dead guy back? Because people keep getting picked off. This was featured obviously on an episode of Best of the Worst with Red Letter Media. It's a good one. It's a fun watch. Eh, maybe not. It's okay. It's got some okay kills. It's got a lot of awkward sex scenes. It's got the tits. And who doesn't want to see tits in 480 vertical lines of resolution? That's just the best way to view a tit. I think this is the first in the degausser line that I've bought, because I missed out on the Cannibal the Musical, and there was that other one that I wanted to pick up and I never did. Their degausser line is basically shot on video or movies that have been mastered, or the only thing left is a tape master. So they get the best quality tape prints they have, and they put out a solid release. And this one, it actually looks really good for being standard definition from a VHS. Then we talk about Deranged, the Confessions of a Necrophile. This is basically the Ed Gein story, and it actually pretty closely follows all of the events of the actual Ed Gein story, and has special effects by Tom Savini. And the inside cover, or the little, I still don't know what you call the inside part of this, like insert. The insert has a way better cover than the slipcover, especially with that 4K border with the black case. This looks amazing. This should have been the slipcover. So I like Vinegar Syndrome slipcovers. They try to get all artsy with it, and they do these like borderline vector images. But sometimes the vibe is just better when you go old school. You know what I mean? This is a good movie. It's creepy, but it's not really like a horror. More falls into the thriller range. And it more so just has neat set pieces where they go over some of the deaths and creepy things that he does. And then a really good interview with Tom Savini. Can't beat that. Now we're going to talk about the Paul Naschy box. And that's strange calling it that because it's not really a Paul Naschy box set. It's not a box set in my opinion. It only has one Paul Naschy movie in it. It's just very heavily featured with him on the cover and then that title being the biggest one. It's almost like clickbait. We pull it out. Oh, interesting slipcover around the actual case. The O card, if you want to call it that. Your slip case, the hard cardboard, has art on front, back, and then the inside is just basically more of the same. This was a problem, probably, I think, towards the middle part of 2024 of like just the same repeated artwork. And I think it was the November releases for 2024, everything was a lot better. Getting something new. So the Paul Naschy movie itself, Curse of the Devil, is 84 minutes of eternity. If you wanted to feel, I don't know, like you're slowly dying, it's very slow. I started to get very bored. It's basically like the Hammer Films Wolfman, but Spanish and more sleazy. Actually, a lot more sleazy. Got great tits, decent bush, and a nice castle. So it's got that going for it. Second movie, The Vampire's Night Orgy, is a classic. And oh boy, it's a good one. It's got great atmosphere, wild story, it's sleazy, good scares. I mean, what else could you ask for? This movie, it deserves its own little breakdown. I mean, you got vampires, creepy kids, cannibalism, peeping toms, it's everything. I loved this movie. Then the final film in it, The Demon Witch Child, is a genuinely creepy movie. Devil worshipping witches break into a church, vandalize some shit. An investigator finds an old lady that did it and her cult. The cult possesses this little girl, puts the old lady's spirit in her, and then she morphs into a tiny old lady and they put some old lady makeup on this very young girl. And then the rest is low-key fucked up. Demon Witch Child was like, it's a good creepy movie with some cheesy effects, but played very straight. And then you get an interview with the actor who played the little girl, and she gets to kind of recall a lot of what that was like, and a very heartfelt moment where she's a little shocked to learn that so many people are her fans and that she was asked to do an interview about this movie. They were doing a screening and her son, I believe is what she said, were walking up to the theater and they saw the fans outside waiting in line, and she said, oh, there must be somebody famous coming, and her son said, yeah, it's you, they're here to see you. And she was just very taken aback by that, and it's just felt good. Very good interview with her. I think that's about all I can remember from special features on it. Well, you do get a archival interview with Paul Naschy. You get a new interview with Sergio Molina, that's Paul Naschy's son. Interview with Jack Taylor from Vampire's Night Orgy. Interview with the director for Vampire's Night Orgy. Interview with a filmmaker, Victor Matalano. And a couple introductions. All in all, it's not a bad release. It's definitely helped me formulate a theory as to why we get these little, what I call multi-packs and not a box set. But this one probably could have been an actual box set. I just don't know why these films were lumped together, but it kind of feels like just another Spanish box. For 2 out of 3 films, it's worth it. And then one that had me the most curious that I wanted to see, because I am a fan of the original Street Trash, and anytime I see a VSP or Vinegar Syndrome Pictures title pop up, I'm going to grab it because I have loved all of them so far. And I think I spoke in a past video that Eight Eyes was my favorite, and then Black Eyed Susan was number 2. I was wrong on that because 100% Divinity is my favorite. Divinity was It was just amazing. I loved that movie, and I can't believe I forgot that it was a VSP. It is a VSP, Divinity. Go pick up Divinity. It came out a while ago, but please go pick up Divinity. This is such a good movie. It's amazing. I did a little short review of it. Check that out. Anyway, back to Street Trash. This is a modern remake of Street Trash by Ryan Kruger, and I'd say it's a remake in name only because it's very different from the first one. Very different. And I would kind of agree that the original is better in its own way because they're even different in style. Like, because this is a newer film, and you can definitely tell that it's newer and it's has a more modern vibe to it, but it still has its own things that are good about it. I don't think any part of it they're taking seriously, which does remind me of the original. They still have a weird moment where somebody's member gets cut off. What do you call it? Like when they cut someone's dick off? Dedication? And it still has good commentary on rich versus poor. In this film versus the original, it's less about just an accidental thing from a contaminated box of booze. In more so, the rich are directly trying to poison and kill uh, those who are experiencing homelessness. And then that leads to a huge thing. And I think it was fun. It was fun in its own way. Like I said, very different from the original, but it's got good practical effects. It's very cheesy. Nobody's taking anything seriously in this movie. And there's one little critter that I love that little guy. There needs to be more of him. So I'm glad I got it. It is aesthetically different, story different, purpose different from the original Street Trash, but I think it has its own merits that I like. I just kind of have to tell myself it is not the same as the original, but they're both good in their own way. Not sure how else to put that. Maybe I'll do a legit comparison video between the two. If you want to see that, then let me know in the comments. Now, probably my favorite release from January from Vinegar Syndrome, The Seventh Curse and The Witch from Nepal. I love both of these. I feel like I need to do more discussion about these Hong Kong movies because I love every single one of them. We get varying artwork slightly. I need to take this off, and it goes right back to what's on the outer case. So it was an attempt, but you do also get a booklet with some essays, thus furthering my theory that why some of these, especially the double bill titles like Seventh Curse, Witch from Nepal, or even going back to Santet 1 and 2, or even more recent, Chinese Torture Chamber Story 1 and 2, because all three of these, Seventh Curse, Witch from Nepal, Chinese Torture Chamber Story 1 and 2, and Santet 1 and 2, would have made good, basically two-title box set. Each one gets their own Amaray case, with slipcover, inside the hard case, and their own special features, much like what we got with Scanner Cop 1 and 2, or even case design very similar to Thriller, Cruel Picture, or Flesh for Frankenstein. But why I think they don't get that is because Santet 1 and 2, if I recall, did not have a lot of special features. This has very minimal special features. Chinese Torture Chamber Story had one special feature about both, and I think that's what becomes the deciding difference. They can put them in a hard case like this. I didn't do the thing, I'm sorry. You know the hardness of it. But for them to have each their own Amaray case, I think there needs to be a significant amount of special features to put on each disc, and they did not have that with these. Going back to my complaints about the Prophecy Trilogy box set, as I don't really call it a box set, it was a multi-pack. There were not that many special features about each film. If there were enough to have 2 to 3 special features outside of commentaries, like I'm talking interviews or video essay, archival interviews, making ofs for each film, then there's probably enough to say we can have them on their own discs, their own Amaray case, but we don't have that So I think that's why we get a lot of these double build or triple build sets that just come in one Amaray case, sometimes in a hard box. But maybe I should get back to talking about this one. The Seventh Curse is a very fun movie with a lot of random shit, and the best blending I've seen so far of a horror with supernatural elements and then random martial arts fights. Yeah, that's how I'm going to sum that up. And then The Witch from Nepal is it's like a meta experiment. I don't know how to it's a supernatural horror love story and it's fucking beautiful. Pick both of these up. If you don't have the 88 films version, pick these up or maybe just get them both. I don't have the 88 films release of either of these. But glad I have this one. They look beautiful, great restorations, definitely worth picking up. And then Virtuosity. This is actually, I low-key love this movie. This is the VSU release from January 2025. And I would say it's a film that fits right into that niche of what becomes a VSU. We've got this really interesting outer case with the magnetic clamshell. Then you get more like concept art type things with the machine that puts them into the virtual reality. And then the original cover art. So glad that we have some variation here. And then a booklet. I'm a big fan of this movie. One, because I'm a sci-fi fan. And two, this was at a strange age when we're talking about virtual reality, the internet, computers. But before The Matrix, when things just kind of got more serious, I guess you could say, more edgy with the edge lords. But this was a fun little what if a computer program came into the real world? Like, who wouldn't love that? We waited so many years to get that from Tron, and then we still haven't seen it. It was just like the end cap of Tron Legacy. So the actual presentation, it looks good, as to be expected, not only because it is a Vinegar Syndrome 4K master and presentation, but it is a 90s film, so it was gonna look good. All of the 90s 4K movies that Vinegar Syndrome has put out have looked beautiful, largely because they do a great job with restoration and scanning, but also film stocks in the 90s were just so much better that everything looked sharper, clearer, finer grain. It's I think you'd have to really find a cheap movie to get one that doesn't look good. The special effects in it actually they're not bad for what it is. Some of it does look kind of low res, but it was low res at the time. But it makes sense that they're talking about basically virtual reality and computer programs. But some of the best special effects came out of the way they real time synced TV screens to have reactions as they're talking back and forth between the characters or character in the virtual reality world and the people in the real world. There's great interviews with the special effects team that goes over this, how they were able to do that. It was just an odd thing to be like, hey, we're going to do it this way. So interesting choice and really cool that back in the day they found a way to make that work before we had like network syncing and timing to do things like that with the volume nowadays. There is a commentary track with the writer and film historian Walter Chow. It's the only one I listened to so far, but it is just fascinating the way this guy talks. He makes some very weird association. It's like free association. He's not really talking about the film. He's just kind of talking, going from point to point in whatever way his mind finds relevant. I mean, he goes from Kelly Cuoco to Demolition Man, fascism, reality TV, Terrifier, Terminator 2. Like it's bizarre the way his mind works, and it's worth a listen. If you pick up this release of Virtuosity, do the commentary track with Walter Chow. It's just fascinating. And then one of the two cinematograph releases. I didn't pick up the other one. I only picked up Child's Play. I believe the other one was Bang the Drum Slowly. There are so many of these cinematograph titles coming out, I literally cannot keep up with it because we only get 3, maybe 4 actual standard releases that come a part of my subscription that I paid for, and then I have to pay extra money to get almost double the amount of sub-labels from Vinegar Syndrome, which is a thing that's starting to frustrate me just a little bit. But this is a classic movie, one that I've seen before. It's a Sidney Lumet film. You do get some good special features on this. Basically, there's only one that's labeled as a video essay, although I think there's like 3 of them I would call a video essay, but 2 of them are actual documentaries about Sidney Lumet, his filmography, evolution as a filmmaker, an interview with the production designer. This is something that I also saw on Demolition Man's Arrow Video's Demolition Man release. Getting an interview with the production designer, I think that's interesting. You know, there's a lot of getting the actors to come back or the director or the writer. And for a lot of these films, we've heard them talk about it multiple times. So getting someone like the special effects team, which has been very popular in Vinegar Syndrome releases lately, but production designer, that is another interesting way to go about this. Like what went into their thoughts on how to build the set, what it should look like, location scouting, all of that. Very fascinating. So good discussion from him. And like I said, good documentaries about Sidney Lumet. But this is very much a how to drive somebody crazy and good commentary on like Catholic schools, but without going like the supernatural Catholic route of like, ooh, devil worship and all that, but more so like just straight up brainwashing. And it's weird. It's a weird one. Really good movie. I see why it became a cinematograph because it's just a classic good film. I feel like I want to do a whole video on the cinematograph releases because this is one that I am seriously trying to figure out. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, there's good things about them, but like, slow down. Slow down. Let us catch up, man. Let us catch up. So that is your January 2025 releases that I picked up, at least from Vinegar Syndrome. Like I said, I feel like I cannot buy every single cinematograph that comes out because there are just so many on top of VSUs, VSPs, VSAs, and VSLs, and DeGauss, or we're getting double in sublabels that we would normally get for, or that we do get from their standard releases. And it's a little annoying. It makes me wonder why I paid for a subscription. And I know why I paid for a subscription, so I don't miss out on titles. Because I got the FOMO real bad. And that's my fault. I need to talk about it. Anyway, hope you all enjoyed this. These are all great releases to pick up. Deranged might be one to wait for a sale. Street Trash, look for a way to watch it to see if this is your speed if you're a fan of the original. I think it is good in its own right, but very different. Virtuosity is worth it with great interviews, and it's just a movie that I love. If you love Virtuosity, absolutely pick it up. Seventh Curse and Witch from Nepal. If you like the weird shit that Vinegar Syndrome puts out or the things that I talk about, you will love those 2 movies. A lot of you probably already fans anyway. Just go pick it up. Anyway, that's all I got. All right, have a good, yeah.